Welcome to the Pacific Research Institute Next Round podcast. I'm Tim Anaya, PRI's Vice President of Marketing and Communications. And with me, as always, is our Communications Director, Matt Fleming. Matt, how are you today?
I'm good, Tim. Excited to be here and excited for our guest today.
We have a really special guest today, and he may not remember it, but he was the very first guest in the history of Next Round podcast. And that's our old friend, Assembly. Are you officially Assembly Republican Leader Emeritus?
That's right. Yeah.
Is that what we're calling him? James
You
Gallagher.
remember that.
Uh,
So
well, James, welcome back. We're thrilled to have you here.
yeah, thanks, Tim. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. And I do remember being that first guest and getting this thing started off. So it's only been upward from there. So I guess you might be slumming it again by having me back on. But
I don't know about that. That was definitely a fun one when I barely knew how to use the equipment, and but I think we're at 450 episodes later or something like that. So this is when we got in touch with you to have you come on, we thought this would be a fun one because you just completed what I'll be biased and say probably one of the most successful leadership eras in a while, certainly since the time of, I always say the good old days, the Connie Conway era, which I will selfishly say that. You don't have to comment on that, but I'll say that. And so there's a great English podcast that I listened to, and they last year, when they had the big UK election, they did what they called the exit interview with all of the outgoing members of Parliament. And so we thought, well, you're still around for another year, but this would be a good time for an exit leader as Republican leader. So we thought, let's put our heads together on some good questions and have James on to kind of think back on his era as Republican leader. So maybe kind of to start with, um, it's rare. I remember from our era when you kind of limp out of the leadership, right? There's a stab wound or two. You're a little woozy going out the door, but I can't find one person who has anything, even remotely critical to say about your tenure as leader. So maybe start with kind of how did you do it? What do you think your secret sauce was to have such a successful tenure as leader? And what are you the proudest of during your tenure as Republican leader?
well, I mean, first of all, I would say, hey, that's really high praise to be compared with Connie Conway. I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah, man, I feel really good about what we've been able to accomplish in my tenure as Republican leader. Um, when I came into it, honestly, we were in a tough spot. I mean, we had just come out of redistricting. Six of our members, two each, had been drawn into the same district, so they were running against each other for the seat. We had two of our members, target members, actually three of our members get drawn into more competitive districts where they, drew more Democratic voters into their seats, including Jordan Cunningham, who's a long-term colleague of mine. Someone I really admire as a policymaker, and basically got drawn into a district that was just impossible to win on the Central Coast. So we were in a just really tough situation, and I honestly looked at it like someone has to step up. Someone has to step into this and really just provide the leadership and stability so that we can get through this and ultimately start to thrive, as a caucus and win seats. And I think what I'm proudest of is we were able to do that. And I don't think there's any real complicated formula to it. One, I was in a safe seat, so I could focus on the job. I knew that we would need a lot of resources, so I immediately started focusing on fundraising and was able to be really successful on that front. Ultimately, we raised our overall amount into races from about $2 million to a little over $8 million in my tenure. Getting that into protecting our incumbents, but also going on the offense. And then I also messaging, really putting a focus on disciplined messaging on the issues. And for us, I think what we really, determined we were going to do is focus on the cost of living issue, public safety, homelessness, and education issues. And I think we're able to really draw this stark difference between us and the Democrats. And then lastly, like really going out there and recruiting and supporting good candidates, up and down the state. And even our candidates that didn't win, I was so proud of the effort that they put in, and that we really, I think and especially in this last cycle, we spread the field. We made the Democrats have to spend, so much more money, and they couldn't focus in on trying to take out people like Lori Davies and Greg Wallace. And they still spent a lot of money there, by the way, but they couldn't spend as much as they maybe could have had we not been going on the offense and being really aggressive politically. And I think the last thing, Tim, that I think we did well and I'm really proud of is we were aggressive in the policymaking arena, and we called out some of the craziest policies of the Democrats, and got real good attention and media focus on it. And ultimately, we won the narrative and won the policy argument. So Prop 36 is probably the best example of that, where it was really Republicans driving the narrative that we needed this crime measure. We needed to make crime illegal again in California. They tried to stop us every step of the way, and a disciplined Republican caucus, brought that issue to a head and ultimately got that before the voters, and we won the issue with 70% of the vote. And I think that's just one of the examples of where we as a Republican caucus, disciplined, focused on our message, we're able to really make a difference and drive the policy debate as well. So I mean, all of those things, was I really take a lot of pride in being able to bring together all of the members of our caucus, utilize their talents, and be successful, on all of those fronts. And I mean, I think that's what a good leader tries to do is not so much about, them, but really about the team, and trying to bring everybody together to be successful and make sure that we accomplish our objectives. And so, I was proud to lead the caucus for this time, be a good steward of that. And now it's time for someone else to step up and do that.
Yeah, leaders are often remembered for the political victories, but what you just mentioned is obviously near and dear to Tim and I's heart as communications guys, wrangling a caucus and getting them to stay on message and pushing for the good of the team. It's a very, very challenging job, and you did do that well. The other thing that came to my mind was the recent the bill on child sex trafficking. You guys did really good work there. Driving home an obviously moral message. You did the right thing, and you got the caucus, the Democrats, to do the right thing, which was the ultimate win, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, those are really good victories as well. I mean, Shannon Grove did some great work and legislation. That should just be common sense, right? That, minors being trafficked, there should be serious penalties, for children being bought for sex. And, the Democrats did what we know they always do, which is try to kill these bills quietly in Public Safety Committee. And rather than, we certainly fight that every time, but this time we really made sure we drew a lot of attention to it. And honestly, I think the media also finally took a lot more notice. Reporters like Ashley Zavala and Emily Hoban, took a lot of notice on this and called this stuff out, and I think it really brought it to a head. And so, those were also, I think, to me, like, really big victories, and obviously, more importantly, because of the issue and being able to get something done that was just. And help protect our kids.
It should just be common sense. That's the plaque Tim and I are going to donate to the leader's office going forward. So real quick, what advice do you have for your replacement and now Assembly Republican Leader Heath Flora?
Well, look, Heath has really been my right-hand guy. I give him a lot of credit. He was a big part of our electoral team. Was a guy who helped raise a lot of money for the cause. Provide a lot of input, and then also, was our floor leader and was really, a part of a lot of our policy objectives and what we were trying to do on the floor in terms of motions and other plays to get our message out. And so, there's a lot that I think that he kind of already knows. Every leader is going to approach it a little bit differently and give their own signature to it. I think my biggest piece of advice is just really try to build the consensus, and that can be sometimes a tough thing when you have multiple members, all who really believe passionately in what they're doing. You alluded to it earlier. Sometimes, Matt, it is hard to get everybody to maybe focus on the same thing. That's okay, but you try to provide a space where you give everybody the ability to give some input, and then ultimately stake out an objective and an action that moves the caucus forward. And so I think that's important, and I think that's something our caucus has done actually pretty well over the last few years, and I envision will continue to do as we move forward.
Connie would always describe the job as not herding cats, sometimes herding feral cats. So we on the inside know how that can be sometimes, and kind of leads into this question. You obviously didn't come into the whole thing unfamiliar, right? That you started as an assembly fellow. Maybe I had a little help there getting you going there, and you worked as a staff member. You worked as a county supervisor. So, what kind of surprised you the most about your time in leadership? What did you least expect that you experienced?
Man, that's a good question. I feel like I was well prepped for it just because I had known other leaders. Brian Dowley, is a good friend of mine, had been a leader in the Assembly Caucus. So many different people that Mike Belines, obviously knows this very well. Connie Conway was definitely someone I talked to a lot. So I felt like I was kind of prepped for what the job is and what it isn't. And maybe that's something that really helped me, is just having like the value of that experience of having that input, mentorship, guidance from other people who had done it before. I think maybe the thing that maybe most surprises you is just that sometimes, no matter how much you try to put everything together into an organized fashion, things can go awry, and things can, and unexpected things happen, right? Despite our best plans, and you have to be nimble, right? And you have to find ways to kind of ride the lightning, if you will. I would say that actually a few times during my tenure is like, hey, let's just ride the lightning here. This isn't what we expected. It's not what we wanted. But nonetheless, like, we got to be nimble, respond to the thing, and keep on the objective, right? Of showing the difference between Republicans and Democrats on policy, on politics, and hammering home our message. And I think that, even when we had those kinds of things, I'll use as an example, Prop 50. I mean, this redistricting effort, not something that any of us wanted or even expected coming back in a legislative session, but we said, hey, we got to fight this. We got to find a way to really, drive home the narrative, respond to what's going on in real time. And there's a lot we don't know. But I thought we did I was very proud of my caucus that, the motions that we did on the floor, the work that we did in committee, some of our newest members, Ali Macedo and David Tangipa, did great work in committee, just calling out, what these guys were doing. The whole mantra that started, who drew the maps? Who drew the maps? And they couldn't answer the question. And, things like that. Like, we probably could have never expected that was what was going to happen. But we rode the lightning, and I think we really put a lot of stink on this and showed how terrible it was. And now we got to stop it, at the ballot box. And so, maybe similar to Prop 36, we want to make this another victory.
So one of the most challenging things from an outside perspective looking in, with being leader, is that you have to be an advocate for your caucus. You have to be a strong, in your case, Republican. But at the same time, you have to kind of work with the Democrats because they have all the power, and no matter how much anyone says it can't get worse, it can always get worse. So you had to go through these partisan battles on a daily basis, with Speaker Rendon, with Speaker Rivas, with Governor Newsom, with the Senate, and obviously the Senate is always the Assembly's enemy. But you had to work with the two speakers and with Newsom. What did you find working with them to be like? Was it enemies by day, friends by night? Was it heated all the time? Was it they were tough but fair? Or did they hit below the belt too much? I mean, how can you characterize sort of in your interactions with them?
Yeah, I mean, there's always this push-pull of that job of obviously doing your job as a minority party to voice the opposition, uh, to talk about what you think is wrong with what the majority party is doing, and yet not let that get in the way of things that you might agree on and things that you might want to work together on. And there's always that. It doesn't get as much attention, those types of things that they're actually bipartisan. And one of those was housing, housing reforms that we helped push through over the years, where you had people on both sides of the aisle say, "Hey, look, CEQA is a problem. CEQA is a problem, and it gets in the way of good projects that we need to get built." We did a lot of good work on that front, but there are times when we certainly, and I think under my leadership, we called them out a lot, and I think the key in all of that is to not make it personal. I always tried to make it about the policy difference and why I thought they were wrong, and calling out policy differences without making it personal. And I think that helped at times, that uh, people on the other side realized that I wasn't calling them out necessarily uh, you know in a negative personal light, but basically just saying, look, we have a job to do to call out why we think you guys are wrong and why we think we need to move in a different way, and that's fair game. And it's also, look, you have to not be afraid of being punished, right? Of having retribution, because they do have the power. And I think, maybe out of my experience being a member who would push the envelope, and there was times when that resulted in me, like, losing a bill or losing a committee assignment. Um, Sometimes you got to be able to accept those kind of consequences, and then you can also call that out, and we did that. I mean, like when they took members off a committee simply for just voicing our opinion, we called that out as unfair tactics, right? And so, look, there's always that push pull, and there's going to be bad feelings at times when you're dealing with a speaker or a pro tem, but you got to continue to work through it. And for me, I think we were able to navigate those things really well, without taking anything away from our righteous fight for the issues that we cared about. And every leader's got to find that way, and find what works for them on that front. And you got to fight for your caucus, because no one else will, right? No one else is going to fight for us. Another thing I would say every time is, hey, they don't really care about us, right? The only people that care about us is the people in this room, and in this caucus. So we got to look out for each other, and I think we did that really well too. I'll tell you, Heath Flora, as our floor leader, often was looking out for other members, and making sure that they were covered, that their backs were covered on different items, targets, and otherwise. So those are the things that you really think about when you're kind of in the push pull of fighting with the majority over different issues.
One of the things that I think was most interesting about your time, certainly in leadership and the assembly, was you were able to do all of those things at the Capitol, but you were also able to go to the courtroom. And there was a very interesting time when you and now Congressman Kevin Kiley were engaging in legal battles with Governor Newsom during the COVID era. So can you walk us through, what was it like to, take such a battle to the governor, especially as lawmakers, and kind of how you strategized how you would go through that case and that fight?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Kevin and my lawsuit against the governor was galvanizing in a few different ways. One, I mean, during that time, a lot of people were looking at how do we fight back about some of these unjust things that were being done, executive orders, mandates, and such. And by bringing that lawsuit, I think we really gave voice to a lot of frustration and gave people a pathway of like, hey, here's something that we can do about it. And I think we were the first to get an injunction against the governor during COVID. I think we were the first to get a judgment, final judgment against the governor. There was others who had successful lawsuits as well. But it took that fight, and it also showed that we meant business, right? And so when we got into this redistricting fight, that came up again. That hey, we will fight it out in this legislative arena, but we're prepared to take this to the courtroom as well. And I think when Democrats know that, it does keep them honest, to some extent. I mean, they're still obviously pushing through things, that we obviously disagree with. But when you're willing to like actually go to those different lengths and fight in different avenues in the public sphere, not just the legislative arena, but the public sphere and outside of the Sacramento Beltway, that's where I think it's most effective, right? I mean, when people are hearing from their own constituents, hey, we heard you voted, against protecting 16 and 17-year-olds. What's wrong with you, right? Or hey, man, we heard that you voted to, tax us more for high-speed rail, right? I mean, these are the kinds of things I think that can really move the needle and get people and build the pressure on Democrats, in their home district. So I think all those things are helpful, and we certainly tried to utilize them as best as possible during my tenure.
One of the most important issues that any Republican leader works on is the state budget. Unfortunately, Gavin Newsom is not known for embracing Republican priorities and writing his budget plans. So just let's say you had magic powers and all of a sudden you could control the state budget and you wanted to make some cuts. What three agencies or organizations in the state government would you eliminate if you could just get rid of them? A little Rick Perry moment for you.
California Air Resources Board is definitely up there. I mean, this is a terrible organization, right? That has unfettered power. They're totally unaccountable. And legislators on both sides of the aisle complain about them all the time, but the Democrats never can bring themselves to like actually rein them in. Now maybe I wouldn't get rid of them completely, but I'd certainly rein in their powers and subject them to greater legislative accountability, ability to change rules. They are one of the ones that probably the most egregious have driven up our costs, forced us to get rid of perfectly good vehicles. They were pushing the EV mandate and the ban on gas-powered cars. Luckily, we were able to stop that because of our federal partners in Congress and administration. But that would definitely be one of them. And look, the other thing, to go a little bit off of your direct topic, we did have some success in like pushing the Democrats and the governor to actually fund things, and one of them was wildfire. I like to point to that 2021 budget cycle when the governor wanted to really shortchange the budget on wildfire funding, and we damn near shamed them into doing record funding into wildfire funding that year. We ended up with $1 billion that went into fuel reduction projects and other good programs that were reducing fuel in our public lands. And that was another instance where we had just had these devastating fires. We'd already had the North Bay fires, the Camp Fire, but then we had the Dixie Fire, the largest fire in California history. And it provided that opportunity to say, really, guys, you're going to just keep doing the same old thing, or are we going to do something real? And so there are those opportunities. we tried to push that in Prop 36 this year to like get that fully funded. Hey, the voters just gave a mandate to this thing. Are you really going to undercut it? Got some more funding for it. Still didn't get what we needed. Ironically, the money they're going to spend on Prop 50, for this redistricting deal is probably about the amount of money we needed to fully fund Prop 36 this year. So it just belies the fact that they could have funded it. They absolutely could have had, could have made sure that money was there, but they just decided to spend it on other things. In this case, a total partisan redistricting proposal. So, budget has provided an opportunity for us to really drive the narrative and to show that stark contrast between what they consider priorities and what I think the California people consider priorities. So, we'll continue to advocate in that way. Yes, there are Coastal Commission. I'll add that in there, Matt, as another one that could probably be eliminated. Doesn't serve any really useful purpose other than to get in the way of, for instance, right now, the Palisades rebuilding of homes in this fire-ravaged area of Los Angeles. And so many different agencies that really, just take up space. They are a place for someone to get a salary. But are they really, making everyday Californians' lives better? No. They're honestly just taking up space and causing more problems and increasing, the cost of living for everyday Californians.
So one of the challenges of term limits is that now it's a little better now with how we have the new incarnation of term limits, but it seems like, there's so many things that you come into the Capitol on your to-do list. And before it seemed like just when you figured out how things worked, it was time to go. You have had a little more time, in this version of term limits, but I know you haven't gotten everything done that you want to get done on your to-do list. So with your roughly year left that you have in office in the Assembly, what's your biggest item of unfinished business on your to-do list?
I want to get a CEQA exemption for wildfire fuel reduction projects. We got close this year. Some I've been pushing for a while. I'd say in the old days, we couldn't even get out of committee, couldn't even get a hearing in the Natural Resources Committee. Here of late, both myself and Stan Ellis, Bill Asaley, before he became U.S. Attorney, was the main author of this bill. We had a CEQA exemption for fuel reduction projects, got it all the way over to the Senate, and it got killed on suspense in the Appropriations Committee. I would love to actually get that done, and to have a real strong CEQA exemption, for these wildfire prevention projects. It's something that is a long time in coming. A lot of people have sort of maybe poo-pooed this, two-state solution that I rolled out. There's a real conversation that needs to happen about the failure to really address inland California issues, and I, it's not just me that has said this. Anthony Rendon actually said this as he was going out as speaker, was that, hey, the next speaker is really going to have to address this problem with inland California versus coastal. That the issues are very different, and we've governed the state, one size fits all. And as a result, there is a lot of and I'll just call it, I've labeled the inland part of California has been overlooked, neglected. And I give some different examples. I mean, you think of the hardworking refinery worker who commutes to his job in the Bay Area, but he lives in inland California. He's about to lose his job as the refinery shuts down because of these policies that have mostly been championed by Bay Area and LA legislators. He goes to the gas pump and he pays the highest cost of gas in the nation in the 48 contiguous states because of the policies that are largely passed by coastal legislators as part of their climate policies. And then he pays utility costs in the inland part of the state where we have to run air conditioning in the summer because we have some of the hottest summers, in the nation. And we pay the highest electricity costs, right, in the nation, largely because of mandates and policies that have been passed, by more coastal legislators who don't even have to have air conditioning, right? I mean, so this is the dichotomy that we have in California, and I think a lot of what I'm saying, this was a response to Prop 50, and because seriously, if you were going to strip me of all in Northern California and say Bay Area people like Jared Huffman and Mike McGuire are our representatives now, and speak for rural Northern California, then we've really gotten to a place where there is no representation, and the only place that we can have that is by our own self determination, through statehood. So I brought this really as a serious conversation that we need to have, and I intend to actually bring that to a head and have a lot of conversations with fellow legislators. I think we're going to get a lot of input from locals and others who have been feeling the same thing. And whatever it is, I hope what comes out of it is a better understanding and real input that finally makes it into the policy making process, that takes into account these very real interests, of what I will call inland California. Basically these counties, from Modoc in the north all the way down to San Bernardino in the Inland Empire, that really have not gotten the attention they deserve.
And you're carrying on, of course, in the tradition of another great North State legislator. I actually have a 51st or fight button from the late great Stan Statham.
Yeah, he was the last one to really push that and press that issue. And I got to meet Stan, briefly. It was when I was a county supervisor, and have a discussion with him. It was a good discussion, man. As somebody who had really been in that fight, and look, it's true. The more things change, the more they stay the same. This has always been something that has been an issue in California. I think Alex Vassar, who has all of the data, information on everything legislative, I think said that there's been over 200 different ideas for state splits since California's inception. So again, not a new conversation, but definitely one that needs to be had.
Well, Stan wrote a book about it not long before he died, so I highly recommend you pick up a copy of his book and check it out. May give you some good ideas for your legislation.
I've not read the book, and I do intend to do that. So I will pick that up. Thank you, Tim.
So what I know you have a little bit of time left in the legislature, but I'm sure you're starting to think of what's next. I mean, what's next for you?
I mean, first, man, I do want to finish strong, continue to advocate for, the issues that I think are really important, to my constituents and to people in the state. I really want to see us be successful electorally. So I'm still going to be very much engaged in our elections team, in the Assembly caucus. Want to add to our numbers. So I'm going to put some good focus into that over the next year. As what's next, I don't know yet for sure, right? I mean, for me, I think it's always been, I am a man of faith, and I feel like God has always sort of opened the doors where He wants me to be, and to give me opportunities for leadership, and stewardship. And so I kind of look at it like, hey, the right thing will come along, and I'll know it, and it'll be confirmed, and then I'll jump right in. I will say in my time in politics, there's been multiple times where I thought I was going to go do one thing, and then the door just closed on that, and that was not the thing, and I ended up doing something else, that was valuable, and I think a good use of my talent. So we'll see what that is, down the road. Until then, I'm just going to keep plugging away.
So last question, we're going to see if your answer has changed over the last 7 years. So we call our podcast, of course, Next Round because of our proximity to wine country and our love of discussing public policy over a great glass of California wine. So
Right.
what is James Gallagher enjoying as he toasts a very successful leadership run?
Man, that's a good question. And I do have the picture right behind me that really emphasizes that
Yes.
this wine country picture. Real quick thing on that, like this backdrop actually ends up being the place where I do a lot of my interviews. I've done national interviews with this same backdrop, so I get a lot of compliments on that. Let's see. Most recently, I actually was down in Napa with my wife. We went to Cake Bread, which is classic Napa winery. I actually found out that the founder originally purchased that property. It was a cattle property. Purchased it from sort of the old time cattle ranchers that had it with a $2,500 down payment that he got by selling a coffee table book of pictures. So for $2,500 down payment, he got into that first Cake Bread winery, and now it's obviously exploded, and they've got an amazing California business. I'm always amazed by those stories. But I had a great Cabernet Sauvignon that they make at the winery. Bought a bottle of that, and so I have that at my house, and that will probably be the vintage that I will have a celebratory drink on my leadership tenure.
Well, James Gallagher, we're thrilled you could join us today. Obviously proud to know you and proud of all the work that you've done and the fight that you've fought and that you will continue to fight in whatever you do. So thanks so much for joining us today for Next Round.